Hello and welcome to Whose Views Reviews, and on this episode we're going back to 1963 where it all started via 1988. Confused? Well, you will be, because it's now time to wade through unlimited rice pudding. Here we are again, and yes, I'm joined by Paul, I'm joined by John, and we're here to talk about the 1988 sparkly fan favourite that is Remembrance of the Daleks.
Hello.
And all these years later, guys, this
Hello
is
again.
a real fan favourite, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It feels like 90 minutes since I last spoke to you both.
Yeah. So where we are, we're going back to Doctor Who's 25th anniversary, 1988. Memories of Remembrance of the Daleks, guys?
This is a real, you were saying it's a fan favourite, JT. For me, it's one of my favourite McCoys. In fact, one of my favourite Dalek stories. It's got a lot going for it. It's a nostalgia trip. It's like a love letter to our favourite show, and there's some great things in it. It's one of my all-time favourites. That's
a good start. What about you, John? Oh, I've got a message for you here from Tarly Spider, by the way. He wants to know if you're chair dancing.
I am, yes. Just me and Dav, myself and Davros have got it down to a fine art as he displayed it in this. Again, I would like to apologise for the voice here. I've been gargling with TCP in the hope of getting this better, so just bear with me. It comes and it goes. But I have to agree with Paul. Yeah, this is, to think this is Doctor Who in its 25th year. We were a year away from cancellation, although we didn't know that then. So, but knowing that now, when you come and view this story, this was like a series reborn. And to think, I will get into the weeds of it very shortly, but to think this show was only a year from cancellation, when you see this, it's unbelievable.
It is.
Such is the freshness of this particular story.
I'm glad you used the term freshness, because obviously we've all watched this for the umpteenth time recently to review it for this show here on Whose Views Reviews. But what comes through for me is still a freshness. This show is unbelievably brilliant. I have to admit this story is one of my all-time favorite Doctor Who stories from the whole original 26-year run. And we have to let's start with the very beginning. This is, of course, written by Ben Aronovich, who has since gone on to fantastic things. He is a real accomplished author now. So this was his first foray into Doctor Who. And he produced, as a fan, a story that John's just highlighted there, fans would get. We understood this. We got the references. He's since said many times in interviews, of course, he was going to put continuity references into this because he was taking them right back to 1963. It was the 25th anniversary of the show itself. And that was something, of course, that producer John Nathan Turner was very, very aware of. And what John was keen to do was to actually celebrate what was going on. So this show was first broadcast on BBC One on the 5th to the 26th of October. And also it was the first season, wasn't it, this season 25, where Andrew Cartmel, who was the script editor of the show, he really got his teeth into the show here. He got his stamp on the show. And by goodness, you can tell, can't you?
There's a number of things we spoke about there, JT. It's worth looking at again. Yes, Ben Aronovich did very much write things and include stuff for the fans, but he didn't just write for the fans. He wrote for the wider. This, unlike some other stories which we'd had in the previous few seasons, was very accessible to all viewers. You didn't need to know a lot of backstory. The stuff that was there was a bit of fan service, yes. I still think a few viewers will have got the Tortoise Lane reference. There's certain things happens in other shows. I would still get there, not being a die-hard fan. But the whole thing about the Hand of Omega and the Doctor coming back, and the fact that it happened, the Doctor had, as Paul says, white hair, made it plain to people viewing this that this was something that happened when the Doctor was William Hartnell and it was unfinished business. That was all made explicitly clear, and it was open enough for everybody to enjoy. And also in terms of the Andrew Kirkmel thing, it was very obvious at this point that Andrew Kirkmel had sort of cleared the decks, and he was now running this show as script editor himself. And while a lot of emphasis and credit is placed on the role he played in Doctor Who's latter years, along with Ben Aranovich, who I think was around for an awful lot of this, including stories he didn't write. But it's also, in case we forget this, again, you showed a picture of him. This is thanks to John Nathan Turner. John Nathan Turner allowed people, new people in, and gave them the ability to shine, to take the show in a different direction, albeit with his say-so and with his expertise behind them in order to make sure it worked. So I don't think we would have had this but for John. So credit to John, credit to Andrew and to Ben and all those other writers too, but credit to the producer for being comfortable enough in his own skin to allow others to lead the show in a different direction.
Absolutely. I mean, John, as a fan himself, was always aware of some way to celebrate an anniversary. Of course, he'd mastered the season 20 year for 1983. Here he was coming into 1988, aware that was a silver anniversary. And it, you know, I'm just so pleased that he actually thought 25 years of a show is worth doing something. Yes, okay, we didn't have the big anniversary special, but we had these mini episodes. We had Remembrance of the Daleks that was kicked off this entire series, didn't it? And it did feel, this really did feel celebratory. It even got, let's have a look, it got the Radio Times, didn't it, Paul? I mean, we got the now famous, more or less, back page where Doctor Who seemed to live throughout the 80s, really, with this lovely picture, Unexterminated, which, of course, brought back to the Radio Times readers, the new series is starting. And I have to explain to our foreign friends as well, this was weekly now on a Monday night from the 5th to the 26th of October 1988. So it was every single week. And it was just an amazing, I don't know, it felt fresh again. It was an amazing time. I don't know about you, I was 18 and I was at uni. And everybody would huddle around. There must have been about 7 or 8 of us that would huddle around this color, the one color television that was in our residence. And we'd all huddle around it. And everybody knew I was the big fan. But everybody was there watching it with me, you know? And they were watching every week. This entire, it was magical, really. Paul, did you have a similar experience, or what's your recollection?
When I saw it originally, I was 22, and I actually I remember fondly, really. Don't count John. Sorry, not count the. Thank you. But the thing is, I think the memory at the time was that it was really fresh for me, like you're saying, and it really felt like, although J&T was still running the show, it felt like it was a new showrunner in town. It felt very different from what we'd had 24. So this was like a real renaissance of the McCoy era, this start of this series and 26. And there's so much, we're talking about the continuity. What's good about this is it's part of the story. It's not just tacked on as like a fan service. It's really part of the story. It's a real backstory of Hartnell arriving in Unearthly Child, and the backstory of maybe why he left, and then all that building up and McCoy coming back. You know, it's a fabulous story too, and it's not just fan service, I don't think.
No, I think you're both right on that. It's accessible. Anyone can watch this. And because in Britain, everybody has an awareness of Doctor Who. They all know he started off as an old white guy. I say old, he's probably the same age I am now, to be quite honest, in his mid-50s, or more likely John. So we've got all that going on there. So we've got, but they know that reference, and there's that beautiful subtle line that comes later on when the Doctor has retrieved the hand of Omega and burying the thing as part of his trap, which we'll come to shortly. But he says, oh, your voice has changed, isn't it? The vicar says, oh, your voice has changed. It seems has changed several times, and then that lovely cue on the music, which brings me on. We have to talk about Mr. McCoy. Here he is in his second season, and he is here. He's found his groove. This is a completely different version of the Doctor to the one we've just seen in the previous season.
Yes, absolutely. It very much is. Yeah. They're now able to tailor the scripts for the way Sylvester is. My apologies for the voice. For the way Sylvester is performing the part now, and that very much comes across. Sylvester has gone on record as saying he didn't want to comedic eyes up the Doctor. He wanted to play the Doctor with a bit of fun, in it, but he wanted to show a darker side. He was very much in line in step with Andrew Carmel, who wanted this backstory sort of hinted at and described that the Doctor setting traps and all the rest of it, and McCoy tailors his performance accordingly. Now, sort of guilty secret here, I actually like season 24. I enjoyed Sylvester.
Yeah, he's admitted this before, you viewers, by the way.
Yeah, I did this. I know, and it's something I have to face up to on a regular occasion in Doctor Who circles. But I did enjoy it because, for all, a lot of the stories could have been done a lot better, and yeah, there was an awful lot of overacting and by certain people, Richard Brothers. But nonetheless, Doctor Who still had a freshness at that point. You know what I mean? It was very different from what we'd had during the Trial of a Time Lord season. But by this point, they have finessed, they've refined, they're really hitting gold, because he's got a great new writer. He's got a Doctor who's found his feet, and he knows how to script for that Doctor. Plus also, even though we've lost the delightful Bronnie Langford, we've got a companion who works exceptionally well with his Doctor, and writers who know how to write for her too. So everything is just coming together. What surprises me is how it comes together so quickly. You know what I mean? Ace has just arrived, and here we are in Remembrance, and already the synergy is there. Everything just seems to be functioning.
It really feels like Ace and the Doctor have been travelling for a while, not just one story. It feels like they've really got a great relationship together already that hit the ground running.
But the point is, Paul, the fact is, as a production, these people are only a few months clear of Dragonfire, and here they are producing Remembrance of the Daleks, and that relationship is very, there's in many places, Ace and the Doctor is good together as Tom Baker and Sarah, or John Pertwee and Katie Manning. It's just an ideal match, and here they are doing it in their second story. So it just works, and it's working very, very well.
Does. It makes you wonder. I mean, here we've got Sylvester McCoy, Sophie Aldred, and I totally agree. It feels like this Doctor and Ace have been traveling for a while, because look how much fun they are. I mean, this is obviously off camera, but the characters as well as the actors, they are having fun. They are enjoying each other's company so much. And that really comes through. The Doctor is there. He knows that he's got this new companion. He's going to look after her. He's going to teach her. That was the whole thing about this whole thing, wasn't it? But it's so obvious that that's coming from the fact that Sylv and Soph have just clicked. Yes. They've just got on from that particular moment. And I think it's gorgeous that comes through so much in their stories. And that was part of the shot. I remember sitting there on that Monday night, not knowing what to expect. And from that pre-credits title, which we didn't get much of back in those days, it's standard now, but it was a treat when you got them back then. And then suddenly when the Doctor and Ace turn up, it did feel, you thought, something's going on here, something's moved, something's all, and you became engaged immediately in the story.
Yeah, the setup of the pre-title sequence really sets up the 60s with all the voices of Kennedy and de Gaulle and all that. And then that lovely almost Star Wars-esque moment as the ship coming forward. It's absolutely fantastic opening. It's really great. Really, really grabs you from the start.
Yeah.
The last time we had a cold opening was Castrovalva, which again was, I think, may well have been the first.
Now, John, I'm going to have to correct you on that. Checking with my encyclic knowledge, it's actually Time of the Rani was the last one.
The Time of the Rani, with the regeneration sequence.
Oh, I'm not trying to
that's your favourite season. That's 24.
Exactly. What's going on there?
I've probably seen it too many times. I forget about it.
There you go.
I stand corrected, Paul.
It's okay.
I want to talk about the supporting cast here, because even though we are adoring Sylvester and Sophie here, and the performance all through the 4 episodes is spot on. I question anybody that actually dares to look at their performance and think, hang on a minute, because it's just brilliant. But what a cast! And of course, science fiction fan favorite, Doctor Who favorite, Pamela Salem came back here. Here she was yet again. We've already reviewed her performance in The Robots of Death here on this channel, but wasn't this just stunning to see this fabulous actress back in Doctor Who in this wonderful part, which is very reminiscent of a certain Miss Wright.
She is indeed. She's very like Jacqueline Hill in this. It might just be the hair, but the actual performance is lovely. Pamela Salem's such a good actor, and she really fits in this. She feels like she's a scientist from the 60s who really knows her stuff, and she takes no nonsense from the Doctor. She really holds her own as the scientific advisor to the Captain Chunky Gilmore.
Yeah, and well, we'll come to him in a minute. But what gets me about this as well is immediately when she meets the Doctor, she recognizes a kindred spirit. She recognizes this guy knows something. And, you know, she actually lies to, you know, when they get to Totter's yard and they get to the junkyard, you know, and it's queried, do you know this guy? She lies for him because she trusts him immediately because he's impressed her with his knowledge. What an absolute way to start the show. None of this faffing around, none of this psychic paper nonsense. Here we go. Just somebody that's gone, you know what you're talking about. I'm going to trust you.
I very much think Pamela seemed to be channeled both in her look and the way she performed the character, channeling Barbara Wright. You know, there's very much a look and a feel to the Barbara Wright character that Jacqueline Hill had played. So you get that too. But you're quite right in terms of the no need for faffing out with psychic paper or some of the other stuff, or the locking up that happened and letting it go again that happened during the Troughton era. The Doctor's accepted straight away. And it's almost, you know, it's almost as if he's there for a purpose. As the story develops, we understand the purpose he's there for. So he may well have known of Rachel and Alison and all the rest of it, and Group Captain Chunky Gilmore as well. I think it was sad that this was Pamela Salem's last venture into Doctor Who, because, again, just like Toos before her, this is a character who quite easily have gone off with the Doctor, you know, and had some great adventures, you know, playing
a character that probably, actually been given the chance, would have gone off with the Doctor as well. It's one of those, you know, missing companions we never had type things in that alternative universe that sometimes we all like to think about and enter into. You mentioned this fabulous, lovely lady here. You work. This is Alison, played by Karen Gladhill. What gets me about all this sort of stuff is that suddenly these characters here are immediately accepted, and so are the actors. And it's so obvious that they're all getting on together. It comes through in spades in this show. You know, here they are. They're having a lovely time working together. It comes through in their performances. And you feel that the way that the actors are portraying them, these are real people in 1963 out of their depth in a very dangerous situation.
And that's said throughout the point about not understanding, or there's a couple of questions that the Rachel character asks of Ace about the Doctor, and, you know, about being made to feel useful, and a wonderful reference to Quatermass as well. That all goes on throughout this. Yeah. But you're right. They have a fully formed, if you like, relationship with the Doctor, working relationship with the Doctor, because they have to, because they understand they're out of the depth. Here's a man who obviously isn't. And they just click together very nicely. And with Simon Williams doing was effectively a sub-brigadier character, you know, it all just ties in together. I mean, I was on my rewatch of this, and it's the first time I'd watched it in a long time.
Yeah.
I was surprised how little Simon Williams actually gets to do, which annoyed me, because I hadn't really noticed that so much until this rewatch, because at times he's in the room, he's not got many lines to say, or he just has to deliver a sort of a final line and leave with whoever it is. So I think he was a bit wasted. I think we could have done more with him. So that's my one disappointment in terms of these supporting characters, because I think there was room there for more chunkiness out of Chunky Gilmore.
Fair enough. I mean, I quite like the role that Simon has, as we got pointed out here, Pete. Hiya, Pete. Nice to see you. He was saying it's a sub-unit almost. I think that was the whole idea, wasn't it? Yeah. Ben knows when he's writing this thing, unit is still not quite there. They've come off the back, really. You know, if this is 63, we're putting it on, you know, it's come off the back of the Yeti and the invasion with the Cybermen, and it's in the process. And I mean, the way he puts all these things in subtly is wonderful, but the Doctor knows the future, and he makes that subtle, he calls him a brigadier. Oh, it's just gorgeous, isn't it, what goes on in this at all? So we do have that. Paul, have you noticed, I got this feeling back in 88 watching this live, and I've had it every single time, including the other day when I was watching it. But this entire series, this entire story feels like 1963. What I imagine 1963 does, even that picture there, there's something about the lighting, there's something about the tone, there's something about the coloring they use, the gradient in those sorts of episodes. It makes me think we are actually there. I mean, this is the BBC at its best.
Well, the BBC, I mean, and this is a bit of a cliche, the BBC are great at doing the period drama, which effectively this is what this is.
Yes.
And they do it really well. And the atmosphere of the 60s is great. Like I said, at the start of the story, when they set up the voices of all the like Kennedy and stuff at the start, really set up the 60s feel. And we go into it, the locations are great, costumes are great. Only thing that doesn't fit for 60s for me is Kev McCulloch's music. I think I like his music, but I'm not sure it really fits with 60s as much as his other stuff fits. Like Battlefield soundtrack's great, I love that, and that fits because that's like a futuristic one. But in the 60s one, I'm not sure that fits for me personally. But that's my personal taste.
Yeah. No, well, Pete it's a cracking story, and he loves them. I don't mind the music in it, but Pete seems to like.
I agree with Paul here. I mean, Kev, give it all you've got. I mean, you've done that. Don't get some more of other people and give them that too. McCulloch, there's too much of a. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a boy of the 80s. I love all that synth sound, and I could have danced the night away to it on many's an occasion. However, as Paul said, it's the 60s, and there's a fight scene going on, and what we're being delivered is very contemporary at the time music, and at times it drowns out the purpose of the scene in a bit way that some of the stuff that Murray Gold does nowadays has been accused of. So yeah, I'm with Paul on this one. Well, there's a lovely little bit he does though. It just sets the mystery when Michael Shear as as headmaster is to give the impression that he's under someone's control when the Doctor has to look around the school, and he says no, and then all of a sudden it's he touches the bike behind his head and says, well, it might not matter too much if you have a little round. And there's a little bit of music, and more of that was required because it just absolutely gives you the idea that, hold on a second, this isn't quite right here, and that was very subtly done. Unfortunately, most of it wasn't.
Well, we've talked about most of the gang in this one. Let's just get to the last one as well, because we do have one more to mention. This is, of course, Mike, played by the late Dursley McClendon. Action man of the time, action man of this story, wouldn't you agree?
No, yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And almost a love interest for Ace as well. There's almost a moment of a possible relationship between the two of them in the story, I think, don't you think?
Oh, there definitely is. There's that connection. I mean, we see it coming through, and we've got to remember that Ace is a young girl here, so she will be very impressionable, especially by very handsome young men. But it's the decades here. I mean, this is a lovely picture of them. This is obviously a publicity shot from BBC Studios from back in the day. But look at the way that they're more or less holding hands there. They are a little bit in character here, and that's what got me about this picture. I think it's lovely, even though it's got nothing really to do with the show. But I quite like this. But yeah, it's finally what makes it doomed is the difference between the decades, the difference between a 60s view in the United Kingdom and an 80s view. And I don't really want to go in too much for that because, we get enough of it these days anyway. But it does illustrate that point. Things had moved on in those 25 years. Things were changing.
Yeah, but
that is the theme of the story, isn't it? That's the main theme of the story, isn't it?
That's the reason why the character exists, I think, to show that Ace can meet and have a crush on, this nice-looking young man. And when she realised, sort of, absolutely, and would probably have been a big heartthrob star had he not been taken from us early on. But it's his politics, it's his views, which falling on from the Second World War and all that was going on, and the Windrush and everything that would have been happening in the UK at the time. He was representing a point of view which to Ace's generation, and when we unpack Ace's story throughout this season and beyond, and we discover what happened with her, that would set her teeth on edge, and she'd be very disappointed at someone having views like that. So that's pretty integral, if you like, as a subplot to the main plot, which is all about Dalek purity and keeping the race
exactly
clean.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good writing. It's multi-layered.
It's stunning writing, and actually, it's pointed out by the Doctor himself about the two factions of Daleks, which is actually a gift, because what goes on about this, of course, it's another in the extended trilogy. You've got Genesis, Destiny, Resurrection, Revelation, and now you've got Remembrance. All coming in. It's 3 stories wasn't enough. They had to do 5, but they're all connected in that way, aren't we? And we all know that. We all know what's coming. But you've got that element. I mean, that was a gift for Ben. That in the previous story, the Daleks had splintered, and we don't know exactly what's gone on, except war between Colin's story and Sylvester's story. War has happened, and somehow these Daleks, the Imperial Daleks, are the Imperial Daleks, and the Daleks we've grown up with are the Rebel. It's bizarre. It's completely bizarre, but it's wonderful. And one of the most important points we need to bring this back into the stories is this is 1988, and as Garbage is saying here, this is the time for one of the most amazing scenes in Doctor Who history. And he's also said this because that's what brings it on. So this always frustrates me, this thing. And Garbage will know this as well. This frustrates me because years before people assume it happened, it happened.
Yeah.
The Daleks climbed the stairs. They got up the stairs, and by God, didn't they scare us yet again.
They did indeed. Can I say something about this? It's something that's bothered me for a very long time. It's a fabulous scene, and people are always giving the Daleks a hard time. They can't get upstairs. But if you go back as far as Dalek Invasion of Earth, they swim up the Thames, no problem at all, and no one gives any credit for being very strong swimmers. You notice that? Yeah,
well, that's very true, actually, isn't it? Yeah, it's very true. But this was... Again, this was the end of that episode where this happened. I'm in this group, all students, I'm in this group of 7 or 8 people around this colour telly watching it. And the cheer, I'm getting thrills now thinking about it. I can still remember everybody went, yeah, because here at last it was seen on the telly. You can go, the Daleks can get up a stair. It was so important.
I'm glad Garbage brought it up in the chat, because this is a defining moment in Doctor Who. And it's not only in terms of the way it's beautifully done. It's not done through CSO, no CGI.
It's 10 great big men.
It's BBC prop men hauling this thing up.
That's right, 10 great big ugly men.
But it's so well by Sylvester, and the look in his face afterwards.
Yeah.
So the whole end of the episode is built towards this, and then it's a bit like who shot JR moment in Dallas. It becomes a defining moment in Doctor Who history. Where they say, you know what? Think back 3 stories ago in Destiny of the Daleks, and Tom Baker self-referentially says, if you're supposed to be the greatest, climb up after us. And there we are, here we are climbing up after you. Here we're coming to get you. And that is like, Yabu sucks to you. We're the Daleks and we can do this. And you're quite right, JT. Old Who, New Who, Classic Who, whatever you want to call it, was doing this way before it was the New Who got to grips on it, So
this was 1988. This was 1988 with extremely limited CGI, which was extremely expensive. And as you say, and Sylvia and Sophie have told this story many times on the convention circuit over the years. Of course, it was done with the guys pulling this prop up the blooming stairs, but it looks so good. There's no shuddering on it. They were so dedicated. They did it right. Everybody must have understood this is an important moment in our show's history, because this is going to set the precedent for what comes next year or the year after, God love them, and all this sort of stuff. But it certainly did, because bang, 2005, and it gets all the credit. It winds me up, viewers. It winds me up. It was 1988.
We don't thank CGI for the Daleks climbing the stairs. We thank Fred and Harry and Bert and their sweated labour on that studio day to get that Dalek. And hopefully John Scott Martin wasn't inside it.
No. Let's say hello here to everybody that's watching us, including ADD. Hello, ADD. Nice to see you. He remembers shouting to Sylv, "Get up the stairs!" And of course, the Dalek followed him. So I said, "Oh." I think on that particular one, the entire nation was with you. We've got Badweir here as well. Great scene and cliffhanger, because the Doctor has been locked in the room with the Dalek. Absolutely fantastic. Pete's telling us to heave. Yeah, because that's exactly what the boys would have had to do to get that blooming thing up the stairs. Just absolutely fantastic. But it was a magical moment, wasn't it? I mean, it just, as I say, I'm getting the chills now, and I actually sort of do when I watch that episode back, because I just remember everybody in the room, all those students I was with, going, "Yeah!" It was just so gratifying as a fan to have something that here were non-fans watching it with me, enjoying my show. Do you know what I mean? It's so special.
There's some great.
I'm now really, that's a money spent to them, you know, through Resurrection, Revelation, and then to Remembrance. They look like they should look, you know. Even the Renegade Daleks, the old grey Daleks, have been given a spruce up, and we now have the new white Daleks for the new flashing lights. So they look special. They look a threat. They look as if they could do some damage.
Well, it's a shame they never kept the design for those white and gold ones.
We haven't even mentioned, hopefully we'll get around to mentioning the special weapons Dalek.
Yeah.
We're coming to that, yeah.
But I was going to say that there's some great Dalek moments in this, don't you think? All through the 4 episodes, but part 1 particularly is big. Obviously, the cliffhanger in the part 1, but the bit of the Dalek in the junkyard is superb. And when they kind of they blow it up, and there's all this wonderful kind of to and fro with the Doctor and Ace about not carrying 909 even at that point in the scene, which is great. It's a lovely relationship about, oh, you've got some, have you? Well, we'll use it because I want to use it. It's convenient for me to blow up the Dalek, kind of thing. And it's a lovely moment. And that this season, they love gigantic explosions, don't they?
Yes.
Well, yes. And, I mean, the brilliant thing, well timed. The brilliant thing about this is, do you remember? I mean, this was filmed in, as we know, it was filmed in 1988. This was actually April 1988. They started filming Remembrance of the Daleks. Now, this particular scene where the Daleks are under the bridge and they're having a battle between the Imperial Daleks and the Renegade Daleks, as we call them, or the white and golds and the grey and blacks, made the national news because, of course, what happened is SFX boys got a little bit carried away, and the explosions were huge, and it made the national papers the day after they filmed it, because what happened is every car alarm went off, all the building alarms that were around that part of London at the time went off, the police turned up, the special bomb squad turned up, and the fire brigade turned up, because you have to remember, people outside the UK at this time, we were in a sort of situation with the IRA.
Yes.
And it was a time when, unfortunately, bombs were going off willy-nilly. So, of course, what was going to happen is that all the emergency services turned out, and Sylvester loves telling the story, doesn't he, that the fire brigade turned up, and out of the smoke comes the Daleks, and they all go, as reality is just held for a few minutes there. But goodness me, I remember reading or seeing this in the papers going, what are they doing? But I knew then that we were onto something. I thought, oh my God, if they're really putting so much energy into making the Daleks look as dangerous as that, this is going to be something.
As Paul says, they were big on the explosions in this era, and it works. But to this to happen on London streets, particularly, is just so good. Can we mention the Imperial, the special weapons Dalek?
You are dying to make the special Daleks, aren't you?
Sure,
of course you can. Go ahead.
Because this, since this story and since we promised all sorts of variations from Spider Daleks to whatever.
Oh, I don't like the sound of them.
No, me neither, JT, I'm with you on that. But here, we actually get the first proper variation on the Dalek frame. But it's done not for, the designer to play around with the inimitable and irrepressible and never to be topped Dalek design, but just to do something with it. Here is a badass Dalek.
Mm-hmm.
Blow you
away. The Rambo Dalek.
Indeed, he's got one purpose, and that one purpose is you will go away. And if you don't go away, you'll blow away. And that is just what he does. And I think, just imagine, I was a lot younger than you two were, obviously, at the time. But can you imagine the kids of the time just seeing this? They would have loved it, because they would have loved the special weapons Dalek to turn up at the school probably on Monday morning, and just blow the school sheds and whatever it is away. It's just a fantastic creation, and I'm so surprised. Apart from a cameo in one of the, I think it was Asylum of the Daleks, we've never seen him since.
Well, considering as well that even through that one story, where he appears. And as you say, this is the badass of the Daleks. This thing has become legendary. And I can't understand why they haven't used this thing again. Why was he not involved more in all the stories we've heard about since, that's come out now, the Day of the Doctor, the Time. There will be millions of these battle tanks, because that's exactly what they are. And we'll come to talk about the Target book, but I love the fact that Ben writes this thing as the mutant that's gone slightly mad. And all he wants, it's full of hate. Bang, bang, bang. And you can see that brilliantly in this story, can't you? But again, going back to that, there I am again in my student digs, watching this particular episode with all these others, and that got a round of applause as well. I mean, that bit where he comes down and we see this and we all go, what the hell is that? And I remember some of them laughing at this. They laughed at it until he blew them away. And that's when they all went,
So I don't see the laughing. I think even now, 30 odd years later, that's still a pretty well designed piece of kit, and it looks very sturdy. It looks like what it is supposed to be, a big tank of a Dalek. So I don't find it funny at all. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they ever did bring it back. They wouldn't have to do much with it.
The trouble is, if he comes back, it's just bang, 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 and everybody else is dead. All the other Daleks, because those Daleks, they back off, don't they? They are terrified of this. They know what this one is. They know that this is danger. They know that there's no reasoning with this. It's not them at all. And they know. I love the fact that they back off there. But we have to talk about, as soon as we're on the subject of the effects for Remembrance, I mean, it is brilliant. And considering that, again, 1988, one of the most special things that gets me, and Ben talks about this, is the space shuttle. It's the shuttlecraft. This was an actual shuttle. They built this blooming thing and hauled it up on a crane and lowered it down into the This was above and beyond dedication. Ben always says he was expecting some very dodgy CSO, having seen Planet of the Daleks and stuff like that. and yet, but here it is, looking absolutely beautiful. What craftsmanship and what dedication to our show from the staff of the BBC to bring this in and to actually do this. And the scale's incredible. Look.
It's a great practical effect. What John was saying earlier about, no CSO or CGI, practical effects are great. The Dalek getting upstairs, the shuttle, all that makes such a difference. It's more convincing than CGI, because CGI is taken over, hasn't it?
It is indeed. Do you remember, as we now know, this was a show in trouble. This was a show having to sort of put out the begging bowl every year for its budget. It wasn't really getting any real terms increase. And yet here it is, still pushing the envelope. It's still, taking visual effects and what the BBC can do. And remember, all these things will affect other productions the BBC do in terms of within visual effects. So Doctor Who is still pioneering even at this point. Now, it would be very easy for any other area of Doctor Who or any other programme to mat in or CSO in a model shot just to do that. No, not Doctor Who. They go to the time, trouble, and expense and expertise of building the thing, putting on a crane and flying it in as per. So you can actually see live Daleks come out of the thing and real windows get smashed in too. That's a sign of confidence about a programme, real confidence in a programme. And again, I hate to bring it back to the fact that it's shortly after this Doctor Who's cancelled, but it's the real sadness about that, because this is a show that is having a renaissance. I like the Colin Baker years. We had a Colin Baker. Love all that. So I didn't think Doctor Who was in any trouble, but the BBC obviously did, and they went to every length to try and axe it and get rid of it. But despite all that, and a disencouraged production team, GNT must have been absolutely just at the end of his tether regarding no support from his bosses. But here he was, and the team behind him, absolutely pioneering and using what BBC resources they had for the budget they had to their best. And you know what? We've got to sit back and just admire that. And isn't that brilliant that even in its dying years, Doctor Who was still very much cutting edge?
No, I agree, John. I think the thing about it is the fact that this series and 26 are really are a renaissance of the series, but no one was watching it, which is such a shame. The audiences were quite low, which is a real shame because it wasn't appreciated as much as it should have been. Because
was it 5 or 6? Was it 5 million?
Something like that.
Yes, it was around about 5 million. It was getting.
But
we have to remember. We do have to remember.
Coronation
it
Street,
was. It was up against Coronation Street. It was broadcast at 7:35, so even 5 minutes behind the other British legend, the other stalwart of British television, Coronation Street, which was pulling in something I think was around, I think I read it was about 21 million in the days when it was on twice a week only, a Monday and a Wednesday. And we've got to remember that to take into account. But what is about this now is that all these years later, we remember it. It's still being discovered. I challenge anyone to go and watch a 1983 Coronation Street episode all the way through, because you can't really, can you? You really can't, even though at the time it was quite entertaining with the whole Bet Lynch thing and all, whatever was going on, and those iconic characters that were in it at the time. You can't necessarily go back. Whereas Remembrance of the Daleks, you can. It's accessible. It's a cracking story. It's an action story. Superb characters, tight direction, wonderfully produced, fabulous work, and yet it lives on.
I think the thing about the viewing figures is, I think if they took into account video recording at that point, I think we'd be getting 2 million more at least. I would imagine.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I always hate it. I mean, I don't like the Barb system as it is today. I think it's wrong because it takes into account 7 days, not the bums on seats. Well, back in those days, all it did was the bums on seat that night for that one-time screening. I mean, Doctor Who never got repeated, did it? So you had that one-time screening at 7:35 on the Monday night, and that was it. And the overnight figure was, but as you say, they didn't look at VHS recordings. I agree with you. I think you could have added at least an extra 2 million immediately through VHS.
You mentioned a very important point there, JT, that not only did the BBC put it against Coronation Street, they put it against actually, Ina Sharples was in Remembrance of the Daleks
at the very end.
It was very much there. But no, just to go back to my original point, not only did the BBC try and stymie it by putting it against Coronation Street, as you said yourself, they put it against Coronation Street 5 minutes after Coronation Street started. So in the UK of 1988, I don't know how many video recorders would have been around then, but certainly it would have been half the population, if not less. And I dare say at that point, Mum having finished dinner, or Dad having finished dinner, to be sexist, when they came to sit down, Coronation Street would have come first. And even if they had a video recorder, it would have been, we're watching Corrie, take Doctor Who, go and do your homework, you can see it tomorrow. And again, this notion of the BBC, they could have put Doctor Who at 7:35 on a Tuesday or on a Thursday, but no, it was 7:35 on a Monday, and then I think the year after it was a Wednesday. So always stripped against Coronation Street, deliberately designed to undermine the programme, which, as I said, given the fact that the production team, both in terms of script and what they were doing with acting and in terms of resources and effects, were really pushing the envelope. That's such a real shame that more people didn't get to see it at the time. Although ultimately, as you say, the ultimate victory is Doctor Who's, because I guarantee more people have seen Remembrance of the Daleks over those years now than will ever see Coronation Street at the time. And
of course, you can get it on DVD, and you can watch it. I mean, it's been on BritBox, it's been on the old UK Gold channels when it was on the drama. I mean, it's there. I mean, it is. There's so much love and attention in this episode. I mean, this would have done well back in its traditional Saturday night slot at even at 6 o'clock for 25 minutes. This would have been a hit. I am absolutely convinced that this season would have been a major hit, starting with this blockbuster. And they put so much work into this show as well. This is a behind the scenes shot from the junkyard that's come from there. So much work gone in. You can feel it coming through. The essence of everything that they're doing here. Everybody believes in what they're doing here. They believe in absolutely every aspect of the show. It's just amazing to think, I do get sad because I just think, oh my God, it went out at the time. It didn't. A lot of people missed it. Yeah. We were talking briefly there about, especially as this show was full of drama. These episodes are full of beautiful moments. It's far too many to talk about. Yeah. It's beautiful moment, exciting moment, beautiful moment, exciting moment. I mean, let's talk about that for a minute before we move on.
Can I tell you my favorite? Sorry to interrupt you, Jane. My favorite is and it gets me every time. It's the jump scare in episode 3 when the Dalek grabs the Doctor around the throat. I've seen that a million times. I know it's coming, and every time it comes, I jump. And I love that's a great moment. Anytime you get a chance to see a bit of a Dalek mutant, I love all that kind of stuff.
And a different mutant as well, a new one
as well. Yeah, a new one, a nice big claw. Yeah, lovely.
I love a big claw.
So, no.
So what about you,
Me?
John? What about your favourite moments?
Oh, thankfully, in this program, the more the moments, the scenes and the whole episodes, apart from the end of episode 1, which I've already mentioned,
Yeah.
and the cliffhanger to episode 3, which we have the proper live spaceship landing. Those are proper, real edge of the seat.
And Doctor Who moments as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Plus, at the same point, you've got the notion of, my goodness, they actually built a spaceship. Or, goodness, they get that Dalek up and says, well done, Harry and Bert. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. But I love, and this is just a little self-referential moment, I have always loved the sort of meta scene where Ace is about to leave the boarding house and turns on the television. And then even little bits like doesn't realise it's going to take a couple of minutes for it to heat up. Hello, kiddies. Back in the day, television. If you wanted to watch something, you had to put on at least 10 minutes beforehand.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the old days.
And then as she's coming on, the announcer says, "A new adventure in space and time, Doc." And often,
do you know, I remember cringing at that, John.
You cringed.
I cringed.
Why did you cringe?
I don't know. It was too self-referential, as we all know now. But I'm sitting there as an 18-year-old, really into this story, thinking this is going to be one of the all-time classics of Who. You know, they're getting everything right. It's ticking all the boxes. I was so proud at that point as well. This is 1988. Don't forget. I was proud of that moment of being a Doctor Who fan because everybody around me in Studentville was loving these episodes. They were coming back week after week after week to see what was going to happen with the Doctor and the Daleks. They were loving it. They were all getting it. The little points that you've just mentioned, that you know, that was laughed at, but I was in one that went, ooh. My fan head was going, does not compute.
That's a surprise because I would suggest that sort of audience is what that sort of scene was aimed at. You know, not at the kids. That was aimed deliberately in that sort of meta scene at, if you like, the university crowd watching Doctor Who to get the idea, I know what they were up to there. And it would have passed an awful lot of other people just by. But I've always liked that scene. It just fits beautifully. And also the very last scene, to know that the Doctor hangs about for Mike's funeral, you know.
Yeah, I just think not very doctorish.
It just gives a little bit of depth to the story.
Yeah, lovely.
I mean, the last time that happened, I think, and I'm waiting for Paul to pull me up here, was in Black Orchid when he hung around for Hallies.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Yeah, you're right there. I'll just check my notes, John. Hold on.
But the thing is, John, the thing about that is that the Doctor couldn't usually hang around for all the funerals because there'd be too many people dead. Remember, if he did it for Resurrection, he'd still be there. Do you know what I mean? Beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one because you said, well, the Doctor here, and he probably knows himself in terms of the character that he's in at the birth of something. This is the birth of humanity coming to terms with life in other planets and all the rest of it. That Gilmore may well be a friend of Lethbridge Stewart's, and there's all this sort of stuff going on. So, and probably out of deference to Ace and her feelings for Mike, they hang around for this up until the point where Mike's been taken to the church and then they disappear quietly to the background. I just think it gives that little bit of depth to the end of this, which separates it from an awful lot of Doctor Who which had gone before.
Totally. Totally.
And credit to Ben Aronovich, Andrew Cartmel and Jonathan Turner for allowing that to happen, because in a packed story like that, it could quite easily been cut and moved out. You know, we could have ended, at the school at some point, but they didn't. They went ahead with it, and I thought that was good.
One of my other favourites was, which is a genius moment, is casting Peter Halliday as the blind vicar. That was a great way to get around the fact the Doctor's got a different voice. Looks different, that was a really clever way of getting around that, because it's a genius, absolutely genius idea.
It really is. And as the guys are saying, as everybody's saying in the chat, there's a lot of returning figures here to Doctor Who, which is lovely. We recognise them. We can see it's just nice to welcome them back into the show and have them there again, isn't it? I'm playing all these before and actually playing it straight. And as you were saying, John, the contrast between 24 and 25, it's huge in such a short time. The whole thing has turned around again. And Remembrance is full of beautiful classic moments. I mean, one of the ones that has gone down now, of course, is the scene in the coffee shop in Harry's cafe, where they're talking about that whole underlying thing about the racial tensions of 1963 in the United Kingdom and how that's reflected in the Daleks and how the Doctor, I mean, this is where you suddenly realize you're dealing with a different version, a different setup to the Doctor. And Sylvie's playing this beautifully. This has been thought through, as we now know. This has been really thought through with Andrew Cartmel, Sylvester McCoy, the writing team, John in the background there saying, yay, nay, you're going too far, you're not going far enough, all that sort of stuff. It's so creative. It's so wonderful. And Sylv's wishes of bringing back the Who in Doctor Who is very much evident, isn't it? Because what he's got there is you're thinking, I don't know you. As a viewer, you've got, this is, hang on a minute. You know, there's something about it. And there's a slight unease because the way he performs it, and it carries on, obviously, for the rest of his tenure. But this is a Doctor that's part of a bigger plan that we never actually really get involved in. We don't know what that bigger plan was. Fans can get their own theories and stuff. But at the time, I'm watching that thinking, something's happening here.
Yeah. But that was enough to have that ambiguity about it, wasn't it? You didn't have to have sledgehammered in Timeless Children or something like that. So it was kind of a bit more subtle, and it was left hanging. And there wasn't, you didn't get, it was Doctor Who again. It wasn't Doctor Who, here's your backstory. We'll explain it now. We don't need all that. It's called Doctor Who. The clues in the surname, isn't it? Or the title of the show, you know? So.
Katie, you mentioned the novelization earlier on, and obviously it gives a bit more background to this about talking about 3 people being in at the birth of Gallifrey. You know, you get this notion of Rassilon and the other. You know, and the intention was the Doctor.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that shortly because I want to talk about that because the impact of this story is absolutely huge. Thanks to everybody that's joining us in the chat here. Putting as many things of your comments on the screen. It's lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining us here on Who's Views Reviews for our remembrance of the Daleks and our lovely review. One of the things I wanted to mention about as well is look at this. Now, I found this from the London Picture Archive. This was taken in 1963. And there is a real Harry's Cafe in Shoreditch. And I thought, wow, isn't that gorgeous? Did Ben know that Harry's Cafe was actually there? Because there's a Harry's Cafe in these episodes. And there it is next to the pub in 1963 Shoreditch. Magical. I love that.
That's well done you for researching and finding that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I just thought when I saw that, I thought I had to double check to make sure it wasn't seen. But no, it comes from the London Picture Archive.
Was there not originally to be a scene in the cafe with Daleks where Harry is exterminated? Or
yes, I think that's something that Ben has confirmed was edited out very quickly because of.
I would like to see that because I think poor old Harry Fowler doesn't get much of a bite at the cherry. You know, he's got a good old stalwart British movies. He comes in and says, "Teen toast," or "Here's your bowl of chips."
Oh, I know.
And so I would like to have seen that scene, you know, and just see what happened. Although, as we now know, that Harry's wife had given birth to twins. So
yes, there could be twins. Again, it shows that this Doctor has checked in at somewhere along the line. You know, this doctor's been around. We only are just knowing him, but he's been around in that time. It'll be or at some point he's been and he's checked on these people because of what he's done, basically, or what he's about to do in 60. I love all that. Stephen Moffat must have got all his timey-wimey nonsense from this era, from this story, because it all fits in. And what Ben's writing here is so ahead of its time. It's absolutely fantastic. As I say, I absolutely love this.
All the stuff hiding the hand of Omega, all the stuff hiding the hand of Omega, the Undertaker's is brilliant. And with my little line there about when the Undertaker's on the phone speaking to his boss. But you said he had white hair. You know, it's all these lovely little references are just really, really nice. Really nice little moments of nostalgia. Really lovely.
Do you not think as well it fits the Hartnell Doctor as well? Ben managed to pull off a double whammy there. We've got this new version of the Doctor, the Seventh Incarnation, where we're all taken aback after the comedic version we've been introduced to, and suddenly here he is, all grown up, fully regenerated, all grown up, and he's on his mission. He's remembered what he's got to do, and he's decided his Seventh Incarnation is the one he's going to do it, and he's part of this big chessboard game which we learn about the following year. And all this is going on, and he's got the Daleks here, and he wasn't expecting 2 Dalek factions, so he's got to change his plans, and he's got to do this and that, and then he's got Ace, and he's got to make sure she's not in the way at all, and then everybody else he's got to do. I mean, the guy's head must be just it's wonderful, but everything that's been set up screams Hartnell.
But it proves that behind the scenes that they were doing perhaps longer term thinking than they hadn't done for quite some time. And that there was a well, that's unfair, because apparently there was a plan for Colin's Doctor as well, to peel the onion and discover the fact he wasn't as bad as
over 7 years.
So that's unfair. But generally speaking, there was an intricate plan here for the Seventh Doctor to sort of begin to show himself, and then I think he was to be not revealed, but hinted at that he had more to do with Gallifrey's origins.
Perhaps. It's one of those things we don't really know, do we? Because we never can tell.
I think it's all going to be done through hints rather than stated it explicitly.
That's what I love about this. It's all hinted, so you can make your own assumptions. Because by the end of part 4, back when I'm 18 in 1988, I've come up with all this backstory of my own, going, okay, the Doctor's not who I thought he was, and therefore he's more dangerous. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I don't know this. I don't know the Doctor anymore. Where's he going to go next? And that's and down to performance, down to the writing, down to the direct. Absolutely wonderful. That here I am, a fan of 18, having watched the show all my life, suddenly realizing my hero isn't who I thought he was, and it's all done in a subtle, slight adjustment. Not like today where they reboot the whole thing. And oh no, the backstory, everything you've been told is a lie. Blah blah blah. Oh, that's just absolute nonsense. Here we have it being done in front of our eyes, with respect to what's gone before, but building on what's gone before by basically saying, no, not what you haven't been told lies over the past 24 years. You're now seeing the real. I'm getting goosebumps. It's so amazing. I don't know if you guys know about this, but we touched on it briefly, and I don't know if the Who viewers know about this, but I have shown this before. But once upon a time, the Daleks in this were supposed to have a different color. And they weren't supposed to be gold and white, and they weren't supposed to be black and grey. They were supposed to be blue and silver and red and black. Wow. Now, this has come from the Mind Robber, and I found this a couple of years ago. And this was being built into the script, that this is what the Imperial and the Renegade Daleks would look like in these strikingly gorgeous colours. I have to say, though, even though I do like these, I don't think they would have worked at the time. What do you all think?
No. They look a bit too much like toys to me, I think, a little bit, which is great for collectors and stuff, and for merchandise, fabulous. But for the show, I'm not so sure. I think they just look a bit more like the red ones. Remind me of the Palitoy talking Dalek a little bit, to be honest. But which is no bad thing, I suppose. But I prefer the gold and white and the greys much better. They seem to be more. And
if you remember, years later, we got these in Matt Smith's time. Like the hunched Daleks of Notre Dame. That didn't turn out. No, I'm glad they changed their minds. What we get what we know now to be, if you like, traditional Daleks in their grey livery, and the new Imperial Daleks with their white and gold. Just they look Imperial, because white and gold seem to me like Imperial colours. You can imagine the King's recently worn robes at the coronation were white and gold trimmings and all that. So that absolutely works for me. As nice as they are, I don't think that was the right story for them. The colour scheme they got works absolutely.
Badria's asking here, how is that how Ben wrote it for simplicity's sake? There is somewhere actually where he actually says why he did them blue and red. I think it was to differentiate something in his script, to be able to say they're one faction of Dalek, they're another faction of Dalek. But then when he went and remembered, of course, that the previous story had them white and gold, they just all lifted it up as a continuation, because that's where this renegade faction really begins. All those centuries before on Necros. So it's all just I mean, again, Ben brings it all together, and it's very, very subtle, and it's just wonderful, isn't it? Yes, one thing I do want to mention as well about this, we're talking about effects. Now, who mentioned before? Let me just scroll up here, because somebody mentioned this before. Bear with me. Talk amongst yourselves while I find this, because who was it that mentioned the time controller? Can we remember who mentioned the time? Somebody mentioned the time controller. This thing moves at a fast pace, but I can't remember which one of you mentioned the time controller. But these things were actually state of the art at the time. Who remembers these in 1988? I remember being so impressed that this was in Doctor Who, and now you can get them in the men's room down the high street, for heaven's sake, for 20 quid. But this was hundreds of pounds worth of technology here, wasn't it? These things, these laser balls.
Well, they were. But when you touched them. So when you touched them, when you used to have hair, it made your hair stand on edge, like static. If you touched them, your hair would stand on end. If you remember that.
I don't remember. I had hair at the time, but I don't remember that at all because we were. You would. I only remember seeing them in like museum type places, showroom type thing. Because they weren't in my world at the time. But I do remember this thing being on Doctor Who, thinking that's fantastic. That looks great.
But unfortunately, Andrew Carmel hated it. He slagged it off for being something you could buy in the local.
If you had a few £100, Andy.
He saw that very much as the BBC visual effects, or some of them taking their sort of lazy path towards it, which is why he preferred to set stories, if possible, in the past or in the early past. Because, he quotes the infamous flashing lights going up the spiral staircase in Battlefield as being an example. That'll do sort of ideas here. So he didn't like that. But I'm with you. At the time, I thought, wow, this looks brilliant. It wasn't, maybe that's because unlike Andrew Carmel, I didn't live in fancy London. I lived in the frozen north, so we hadn't seen them yet.
Well, we hadn't seen them at all. I mean, as I said, I think it was a science museum. I'd seen this thing. So to see in Doctor Who, as I say, it was just a joy. The other thing that was great about this for me, and looking at it now again, is just how. I mean, Remembrance of the Daleks was actually a success. It was such a huge success production-wise, and when it came to feedback, the critics actually loved it as well, which was unusual then. They were praising it in the press and what have you.
You remember also what was very much of the moment at this time? What was in the charts?
Oh, well, that was 1987, wasn't it? Yeah, the KLF, who were the Time Lords.
I'm sure it was was it this year?
It was 1987. They had 1 week at number one with Doctor in the TARDIS.
I thought it was this year. 88.
Yeah. Well, it might be. I can't remember. I always assumed it was 87 because with Sylvester McCoy. But one of those, it was 87, 88. One of those times there. Mm-hmm. But you look at it now, and this was going to form what you've just hinted at there with Andy Cartmel. He was going to base the whole of season 27 on being in the past, in the 60s and the 70s, because he suddenly grasped as a new boy in the BBC. That's what the BBC does best. Ghostlight followed it, didn't it? That's what it does. We'll set the whole set, and he never got the chance. Mm-hmm. But the set designs on these things, from the Space Shuttle, they are so simple. They are textured. They are really layered, and they look absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. They feel alien. And I'm just, again, looking at these things, you just think, my goodness, I mean, this must have been cardboard. It must have been cardboard, guys, and they went for it, and it just looks so good and so simple. And the pull down screens, as we know now, are so effective. And I don't know about you, but when I first saw the actual Dalek shuttle, the Dalek spaceship, the mothership, this was different to what we'd seen the Daleks in the immediate stories, especially in Resurrection. This was something really different. I was so impressed by this. I just thought, wow, this show is really finding its groove. And I found this recently. I really like this as well. There it is, fully lit for a rehearsal shot. Look at it. I mean, with the rehearsal, you can see the textures. They've made it. They've really gone for this, haven't they? I mean, how gorgeous is this for 1988?
That is lovely. Even in bright light, it looks really good. But when they've set it for the actual filming, the atmosphere is superb. It looks like they spent money on this. It really does. It looks like the budget's been increased, maybe double even, because it looks so much better than what we've seen before. Yeah,
and when you do actually see it, when it goes back to being, in the shot itself, ta-da! I mean, how impressive! I mean, they must have been projecting these maps and graphics on, surely.
Yeah, the back projection or the those old 3 light things that you show videos on in student unions back in the 80s.
Oh yeah, of course, I'd forgotten about those. Yeah.
Big, huge machines that you could project movies onto. They attached to a VCR, and it went through that way. It was there were odd things, but interestingly, when you look at that, I think that Dalek ship today, you could put that in modern Doctor Who, and it would look at a place because it's sleek. And it's very well designed. I mean, you can see Andy Cartmel being very pleased about that. And all they've had to do is turn down the lights, and go for simplicity, not overcomplicate it. As opposed to the Dalek shuttle, which is very functional, and it's almost steampunk. He's got this notion of And I think one of the characters actually says it's very disappointing, because they're expecting gleaming, and it's not. It's just a Dalek operator sitting operating this thing with steam and metallic.
It's Rachel that says that, isn't it? I love that.
Yeah, you get that contrast between the if you like, the functionality of the shuttlecraft based on the very sleek look of the Dalek, including its lift on which the Emperor emerges and gets an Emperor on the bridge.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just wonderful about this as well, because what's coming through here about this is, as I've mentioned, it is the care that's gone into this. It's the thought, and it is heartbreaking when you think that just a few months later they were all going to be told you're not going again. I mean, it was this was the rebirth, really, and you got that feeling, didn't you? It really came out that this was going to happen and this was going somewhere. You've mentioned him there, so let's bring him in. One of the great things about this story for me was the fact that a certain person was absent from this, and we've spent 3.5 episodes, and I was thinking, this is brilliant. It's Dalek on Dalek, Doctor and Dalek. They're talking amongst themselves. They're interacting amongst themselves. These two factions have got missions. They're out to get each other as well. They're being very, and there's no, you know what I'm saying? He's not there. He's not getting in the way. It's not a Davros story. And then, ta-da! And who saw this coming? Come on, you lot in the chat. Who saw this coming?
I didn't.
I didn't either. I was surprised when the mum deodorant turned up. I was very surprised.
Well, it was nice though, because we all recognised him, of course, from the TV20. I mean, he was a classic back then in 1988, wasn't he? We were all going, "Oh my God, we know what that." It was a lovely nod to the fact that here they were acknowledging that wonderful comic strip, that wonderful design, popping it into the show and saying, "Yeah, okay, you can have that because we love it too." Another tick there from these people who are putting our beloved show together, and basically saying we're honouring the past. It's the 25th year. Yes, it doesn't matter. We love this too, and here he is.
It's like special with Dalek. We get a different version of a Dalek. Now you're quite right. As it turns out, it's not what we expect. It's containing that very fine actor Roy Trommeley.
Roy Trommeley is stunning in this story.
Who does? He shouts.
His best work so far.
Do
you know something? He must have thought, I can't better that because I haven't seen him appear in anything else since.
Well, no, I think he actually did retire. And let's just say for anyone right now, let's do a spoilers alert. Because if you don't know, where have you been? Because what did we all make of? Here he is. Davros was back again. What did we all make of this?
It's Ina Sharples.
Doctor Who, the Missing podcast here. Hello there. I didn't see it coming. Was so happy when he did. Peter's pointing out that, of course, the voice was different. Yes, of course, because we all thought Davros was down below, didn't we? On the planet Earth, we all thought he was in the black chair. You know, I couldn't make. I spent 3.5 episodes thinking, is it him? Is it him? And then, of course, that reveal was something different. Timescales is saying the voice. Sorry, hang on. Where have you gone? Timescales is saying never expected it. Yep. So there we go. There, Pete wasn't expecting it. Peter was saying no, he did not expect it at all, and he also mentions that all the spaghetti around him too as well. Yeah, I mean, Bedouin is also saying Davros's story arc is great. Of course, he'd be the Emperor after Revelation. It does make sense. But at the time, I was so engrossed in the story, I thought they've actually got rid of him. They've done what some fans at the time were saying. They've got rid of him, but no, there's that magnificent twist. There it goes. Ta-da! Gotcha now, you know. Surprise!
What they give you is what we'd all wanted, which is a Dalek on Dalek action without Davros.
Yes.
And then you give it a Davros towards the end, so we get the best of both worlds. You know,
yes.
Quite right. Have you all thought about this and tied it in with what happened at the end of Revelation? Of course, Davros sees himself now as the Emperor of the Daleks. Of course he does. Where else would he be? You know, and fascinatingly, you put that scene where the Doctor has the black and white television and the relay coming from the Dalek mothership with Dalek. That was so evocative because it was like Hitler, shouting about at a Nazi rally. That very much was the vibe that they were after there in terms of what Davros was doing on that black and white footage there. And it really, really added to that scene and gave it real gravitas. Loved it.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Paul?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, really gave it a strong sense of the dictator that Davros actually is. It works really, really well. And McCoy works really well in that scene with him as well, because McCoy does that wonderful thing that Tom used to do and Patrick Troughton used to do as well, that kind of being scared of the villain, and then doing that act of being scared but not being scared, and then going with a double whammy about the Hand of Omega and stuff. It's a fantastic moment, and McCoy sells it so well, I think, don't you?
He does.
Oh, I think I totally agree. I mean, it makes you think, doesn't it? The Doctor's so preoccupied with this bigger picture he's got now. He's faced with the fact he's got two factions of Daleks, which he didn't plan for. So he's got to adapt his plans for this. He has pushed Davros out of his mind because, quite frankly, he doesn't care. As far as he's concerned, the last time that we believe he saw Davros, he was carted off for Necros and back to Skaro to face trial. He doesn't care what's happened to him. Yes, okay, since then, in the intervening years, since 1988, we've had lovely things from Panini in the comic strip there, where the Sixth Doctor goes back and actually gets Davros. We've had the whole series there. We've had stuff from Big Finish and all this. We've had the novels. Yes, there's been, but at the time, the Seventh Doctor doesn't give a damn where Davros is. He doesn't care. But it's no surprise to the Doctor when the cover comes up and there he is on the television screen going, I've got you now. I am surprised. And and he has to stress, the Doctor has to stress to Davros, every time our paths have crossed, I have defeated you. Mm-hmm. There's a warning. And it's actually quite a sinister warning. I've prepared for this. I don't care who the Emperor Dalek is. I've got you exactly where I want you. Mm-hmm. You've fallen into my trap. Mm-hmm. Wow, what a difference this is. What a difference. It's just so refreshing at that point as well, isn't it? Yeah, it still is today when you watch it now.
It does come as a big surprise. Roy Tromley and obviously, for those who don't know, Roy Tromley is an anagram.
Yeah, it's an anagram of Terry Malloy. Yeah,
who's the Davros actor in the 80s. We didn't see coming, unlike, if you like, the Master anagrams throughout the years, which were becoming increasingly obvious. But that one took us all by surprise. But I think it's fitting that effectively that was Davros's last show in the series until the new show comes back, and
the Daleks as well, really.
But for Davros, he just he's eventually made Emperor. He's given up the last vestiges, apart from the head and shoulders of his human form, as the Doctor points out.
Yeah,
and here he is, so obsessed with his own creation that he will destroy other Daleks, which he considers to be not as pure as the ones.
Absolutely.
Although the ones he's created aren't original Khalids, where the renegade Daleks are. They're Khalids. Whereas Davros's Daleks are from whatever part of Necros or whatever people were buried on Necros and he used to make Daleks out of. It just shows how nuts eventually.
Well, it totally does, and it shows how megalomaniac Davros actually is. Yeah. And by bringing him at the last few minutes of Part 4 as a surprise, as a twist, as the foil here, it brings it all together. I mean, but we said that Davros' story arc is great. Of course, he'd be the Emperor. Yes, it would be. And it was only towards that little bit where the penny was dropping, and Terry plays it beautifully. He goes from that sort of report, all that sort of stuff, to the familiar, and it is just really good. People are also saying here, Doctor Who, the missing episode. This is a lovely designer. Martin Collins did some great work on this. Collins also did Paradise Towers and Battlefield. He was obviously a talented bloke, and of course, he did a hell of a lot of other BBC shows, including some comedies and some dramas as well. Because of course, that's
Paradise Towers is beautifully designed.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But it's a great design.
Oh, it's wonderful design. And when I watch things now on what's the channel that they repeat things on, the drama channel, whatever it is, and I'm catching up with stuff from the late 80s and the 90s because I didn't watch television then, and you see Martin Collins' name coming up, you just actually, you can tell it's him because his work is just so gorgeous, and it's I don't know. I mean, everybody on this. I mean, I still like to big them up just now. One of the things we mentioned we started to talk about earlier, guys, was the fact that this is an important story on so many levels, not just for the 25th anniversary, not just for the bringing back the Daleks, not just for how it is really, really good and it's appreciated to this very day by all of us in fandom. But you mentioned it, the novel by Ben is actually a Target classic. This is one of my favorite Target books ever. It's up there with the cave monsters and some of the earlier ones, the Daleks by David Whitaker. I mean, this book was just a joy to read, and I actually reread it earlier this year because I wanted something to read, and I was drawn to it. I just was drawn to this, and I reread it, and this was the starting point for the Doctor Who New Adventures. This is where it all came from. This book was the start of what was to come throughout the 90s, and it's all in there. The characters are brought out more. The Special Weapons Dalek, as I said, is this mutant full of negative emotion. It's just all pure hate. It's thinking constantly, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you. Everything comes through. The Doctor himself is written in a way where you don't know him. It's you can see why Ben's gone on to be a best-selling author, because he's written the Doctor in this in a sort of way. I don't know. He does it on the written page. He's just there, but he isn't there. It's really difficult to describe, but it's so important.
Yeah, this is the beauty of what was happening with Target novelizations at the time, in that the original stories author were tending to write the novelizations. As much as I love Terence Dicks, latterly his novelizations were almost, apart from a few changes, direct script to script to book. Not much extrapolation put into them. Beranovich and Mark Platt and people like them are able to expand the universe that they created in each of those stories, so you get inside the head of the Doctor, or more particularly inside the head of that Special Weapons Dalek. He's not just a tank, he is, as Nicola Bryant said in a record which will remain a living bubbling lump of hate, just absolutely spewing out venom in the form of explosions towards his compadres. As I mentioned, it's been years and years and years since I read it.
I recommend you read it again.
I will. On your recommendation, I shall return to it. I did Battlefield quite recently. The thing I do remember is this notion about putting the Doctor somewhere near, without again hinting the other, referring to this other, and the hints that this may well have been the Doctor had something more to do with the creation of Time Lord Society is wonderful. It makes it multi-layered and adds. And is it Kari Farigantry is the Dalek's name?
The Cat Farigantry, yeah, the nickname.
I absolutely love that. It gives. I'm going to use a word that Pete from the show used, verisimilitude. It just absolutely gives an extra layer of authenticity to this world that Ben has created for this novelization. Yeah, I may take your recommendation and go back to it.
I mean, have you ever, Paul? Have you ever read it?
I've not read it, but I with the recommendation, I'm tempted. Although I'm still a bit reeling from the fact that John was quoting lines from Doctor in Distress, though. I have to say that's a bit worrying. But anyway, so I've got that in my head now. So we start singing. But no, I think I might read it. But certainly, from what you described, there's a lot of the stuff in the behind the scenes or the extra footage of Remembrance that sounds like a lot of that could have been in the script. A lot of it, there's been cut out. A lot of footage that was edited out, and it's a lot of recorded stuff like the Doctor being more than a Time Lord and all that kind of stuff. There's amazing bits. So I'm glad they cut them out though to keep it ambiguous, because I think that part of it, But
I've got the notes here that actually, and I've had this, more or less had this from the horse's mouth many years ago. That was done by the producer John Nathan Turner. He always kept a check on making sure they didn't go too far over. And he was very big on this, especially on the next series as well. And we'll come to that when we start talking about that series. But there was always this element of bring it back, bring it down, don't explain too much. And John was big on that. And that's one of the things he was quite proud of the fact that it was always a subtle it wasn't bang in your face like they would do today. You know, it was subtle, and it works so much better. But I would recommend to anybody, you guys and anybody that's watching this, if you have not read Ben's Remembrance of the Daleks, it's still around. Yes, you can still get from some of our friends like the Who Shop, maybe they might have a copy, but you can still find this version. This was the original cover. 10 years ago now, the BBC re-released it as part of the 50th anniversary range of books for the 11 Doctors, as it was then. Gosh, how we have really trebled. It's also available, if you can find it. The Talking Book of Remembrance of the Daleks was also published a few years ago, and that is still really good. It's read by Terry Malloy, if memory is correct.
Roy Tromley.
Right, yeah. And that is, again, it's just read beautifully, and it really is nice to listen to it because it takes you into it. And somehow they do manage to really capture the essence of mystery and suspense and that 60s feel to it in Shoreditch, East End London. It's just fantastic. So I recommend, if you haven't read it, find it, track it down, go and read it, go and listen to it. It's just brilliant. And you will see the template for not just any of the new adventures that came in the 90s, but possibly some of the stuff that's happened since 2005. Mm-hmm. I really recognize some of that element. And I think it's series 25 and 26 that sets the template for 2005 onwards, but that's something else. Eh?
Very much.
Oh yeah, it's all there. It's all in that element. Yeah. So listen, guys, what a show! Thank you so much for joining me for this affectionate look at Remembrance of the Daleks. Paul, out of 10, how many TARDISes are you going to give out of 10?
I'm going to give it 10 out of 10.
Woo, John.
Yep.
Oh, James, you put me on the spot. I give it 9.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10 TARDISes.
Miserable. And I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 TARDISes.
Yay.
I absolutely love it. So that's not bad. 29.
Can I just see why I'm holding back one TARDIS?
Go on.
Kev, give it all you got, McCoy.
You see, I had the silver anniversary. Do you remember the 25th silver anniversary album from BBC Records?
Yeah.
I've got it on vinyl, I've got it on cassette, and I've got it on CD. And I listened to it constantly on vinyl back then. I loved all that because it was very at the time, wasn't it?
It was.
I loved it. I loved all that with Kev McCulloch. I didn't mind it actually when I rewatched it this time. I know what you're getting at, John, completely. I know what it is, but I think it conveys something. There are some of those electronic sounds that are quite mysterious for me, so I'm prepared to overlook that and still give it the 10. I quite like it.
I mean, I forgive them for spelling a foreman wrong as well, but that's another story.
Oh yeah, the E was missing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it really was missing there.
Yeah.
Oh look! We've got TARDIS Spider, who's giving it 9.5 out of 10. Fabulous. And going that one extra, Badria's giving it 11 out of 10. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. Doctor Who: The Missing Episodes podcast is saying a great chat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much to everybody that's joined us tonight. Thank you to Pete, Badria, to Garbage, who couldn't type but he was listening. Interesting. Yes, I wonder what's going on.
He must have been doing something else with his grubby little protuberances.
One of the classic lines, like Unlimited Rice Pudding, and I do know, of course, that Garbage loves this story. We will have to say hello, thank you for joining us to the Timescales. Absolutely wonderful to have you all here. Really, and everybody else that joined us. Oh, I sound like everybody else. Oh, thank you very much, everyone joined us. So yeah, we've got all that coming up. Oh, Timescales has given us a score. Thank you for your scores. 9.25. I have to think about that one. You've caught me there. Nope, dismissing it. Right, that's fine. 9.25 in the Timescales. That's absolutely fantastic. And I think that's just absolute joy, isn't it? Next time on the show, we are going to be looking at Mordrin Undead, which is brilliant today because as we are live with you today, of course, what's been revealed is the season 20 box set. Now, you'd think we'd plan these things, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's like rehearsed.
So yes, that's coming up for your delight and delectation. We're going to be revisiting old Spaghetti Head himself, and we're going to be looking at this wonderful story from 1983. I think that's going to be fun.
Oh,
yeah, yes. Lovely.
Well, can we have flashbacks?
Well, we might
please,
have to
yes,
go into a
lovely.
sepia type color. If I can get that done, we will do that. That's great. Timescales, thank you so much for this. Love this show. Keep it up. Thank you so much. We will definitely do that, and we will be looking at that. Now, TARDIS Spider, huge fan of ours. Thank you very much for joining us. I have to say, next week, we won't be reviewing Mordred Undead next week, because next week we're giving you our summer special. And we're going to be releasing details of that later on. So have a keep open mind. If you are outside the UK, I'm hoping you're going to love our summer special, because it will deal with stuff that a lot of you possibly wouldn't have been able to participate in. So more of that for next week.
Plus, we're all in swimwear.
That's a hit. That's a big clue. And I will try and be getting a donkey on set. So that's a clue for you. I'll be putting the details up there later on this evening or today, wherever you are. So please, please, please join us for that next week. And we will be back with Mordred Undead for season 2, really, of our reviews, because we're starting again. We've done all 7 Doctors now, and we'll be starting again with 8 Doctors in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, John's just rolled his eye because he knows what we're going to have to review. But it is the 60th anniversary year of our beloved show, and we have to actually look at the Paul McGann TV movie. That will all be coming next few weeks as well. I'm glad he likes it, because John's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to watch that. Anyway, so listen, thank you everybody for joining us. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Join the channel. It's great to see that the views from our shows are going up and up and up. We've got lots to offer you, and I'm hoping you're enjoying our content, because we do have lots coming, and there's lots. Oh gosh, there's lots planned. I'm not even going to tell you what's coming at the end of the year, because I'm excited myself. I can't sleep at night. So we've got all that coming. Thank you so much for joining us. See you again. Guys, thank you so much for giving it up. Get well soon to Brendan. He's in his hospital. He's not feeling very well. So, get well soon, mate. We're all thinking of you. We know you're not. We're not. So, yeah. And we'll see you very soon. So, thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time.
Paul. Bye, JT.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.